Hey, this is Tim Clark with the End Times Matrix News. We're coming to you live today on, this is November the 10th, and we're going to be discussing the 13th pillar of DNA, Abyss, and CERN. And of course, I think we got one more day till we got that ITER thing that they're going to go ahead and go online.
Oh, yeah.
I think we'll watch that for the next day. But that should be interesting. Just a show note: we're going to have Zen Garcia on Friday at 1 o'clock. I think we're doing 1 Eastern on Friday, and so we're going to be going over some of background with Zen on the serpent seed and the end times and signs of the end times related to ancient texts, and we'll go from there during the show. So that's really nice that Zen's going to come over and let us pick his brain on that topic. And of course, Chris is here. She has a really interesting show. So you're going to learn about the 13th pillar today, what it actually is. So we've been talking about this and this should be a lot of fun. So hi, Chris. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. How are you? What was the name of that website with the that you were talking about at the beginning?
Well, if you go to www.iter.org, my experience of pulling up this site, it has a countdown clock on it. It might not now, but I pulled it up over the past couple of days, and it's been counting down to, I believe, tomorrow or the next day. I can't remember off the top of my head. This is it's called iter.org. I think iter actually means rite, as in a ritual, a fusion ritual. Since we've been looking at I lump CERN and these type of tokamak kind of things under the fallen angel technology that the elite, have a blank check for. They just write a blank check, and whatever it takes to get these things built in secret, they pretty much do. And so we're going to be watching that. It's a fusion reactor, and I think it's like 7 stories. They have some videos on there. I posted one video on the Facebook page so people can get a walkthrough and see what it was like. But they have a bunch of little mini videos of different parts of it if you're really, really interested. So
yeah, so if you want to see it too, you can go to End Times Matrix News Facebook page and see it there. And then I'll get a link. I have the link, and I'll post it in the video after the show too, so that way people can see that too. So.
But I actually think it is a rite, just like the Scottish rite of the Freemasons. I think that iter is a word scramble that means right, and that's my own personal opinion. I couldn't prove it, but since all these weird things go on with these projects, it looks like more of that kind of thing. So what do we have here? None, the Abyss,
the Abzu, which actually means abyss too, and it represents this what I'm going to explain today. It's a lot to cover to kind of get people to understand what the 13th pillar is and the DNA, and how it is tied to the abyss, to the underworld after the flood. And so I know that they reference the Big Bang to like so many years ago, but in all actuality, the Ogdoad represents a Big Bang, and this is after the flood. And so I'm going to be explaining that, and I've got some really cool stuff to translate that has to connect with DNA too. So keep that in mind, and we'll just go through it and explain some really missing pieces that I've never really put together with the Ogdoad and the Aeneid. And we've done a lot of shows on that in the past to explain that, but this is kind of what we're going to discuss today, is the Boat of Ra. And the Milky Way represents Nut, which is representative of the female aspect of Saturn. And there's other translations that we could go into before and after the flood, but we're just going to leave that for today. And I have a verse to start out with, which is Luke 11:18 through 19. If Satan also is divided against himself, how will his kingdom stand? For you say that I cast out demons by Beelzebul, and if I by Beelzebul cast out demons, by whom do your sons cast them out? So they will be your judges. And that's Jesus talking, and we know that the judges of the dead represent the fallen angels and the planets, the 7 planets of the gates, and they also represent the 7 judges of Enki and Enlil, and those 7 that goes along with those gods too. They represent the same thing, as well as some gods that are the Egyptian gods too. But there was a split. And this has to do with the DNA too, that's connected with the stars, mainly Orion, and then that was the representative of the Alpha. It's on the equator, and this has to do with the equinoxes too. And then on the other side, which is the end, which is, can you say that for me, Tim? Ophacius, but it's how do you say it?
I think it's pronounced, I say Ophiuchus, but it could be Ophiuchus. So
Ophiuchus.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's representative of one snake, and then that's representative of the end. So the Alpha and the Omega, the 12 constellations, which he's really the 13th, and then the 2 gates, the gold and the silver gate of man, and then the golden gate. So beginning with the Middle Kingdom, Nun is described as the father of the gods, and he is depicted on temple walls throughout the rest of ancient Egyptian religious history. And remember, Nun means abyss. In the 12th hour of the Book of Gates, New Nun is depicted with upraised arms holding a silver bark, a boat. The boat is occupied by 8 deities, with the scarab deity Khepri standing in the middle, surrounded by the 7 other deities. Nunet is the female aspect of Nun. Is the name Nu with the female gender ending. The male aspect Nun is written with a male gender ending, as with the primordial concepts of the Ogdoad. Nu's male aspect was depicted as a frog or a frog-headed man. In ancient Egyptian art, Nun also appears as a bearded man with blue-green skin representing water. Nonet is represented as a snake or snake-headed woman. So these are gods of the dead. They're gods of the underworld, and this has a lot to do with DNA. So this is the depiction of Nun and Nonet. This is the blue-green skin man. And what was that movie that has the blue-green skin man in it?
Yeah, I've been, me and my zombie tracking that I've been doing for the last year. The show called Z Nation is a apocalyptic zombie show. But the point of why I'm actually watching is they got this one character who was bitten by a zombie, but is the savior of the human race because he has a zombie virus. And they actually change his skin color to blue-green in the show. He's the Murphy, they call him. But the point is, he depicts one of these gods that Chris is talking about, the bearded one that's blue-green. And he also has developed psi abilities, which is what we'll get into some of that with Zen with the genealogies of the Nephilim. The fallen Nephilim genealogies, they believe to have enhanced psi abilities. So the Murphy character in Z Nation, to me, represents the new man, the new creation of the, whatever you want to call it, the Nephilim, Lucifer hybrid that's going to come with transhumanism. So I'm just watching that. It's just another one of those, validations of what they're up to.
Yeah, and if I go through this and there's some bits and pieces that totally doesn't make sense, that's okay. I mean, just keep in mind that it took me a long time for a lot of this to sink in. So it's good just to kind of go over it, because sometimes people see something later and they go, oh yeah, now that makes sense to me, because it just depends on how, how people research and what they, looked into and what makes sense. to them. But this, if you think about it, the abyss is where the gods of the dead came from, and Saturn, which is Samael, was the father of Cain, and we're going to talk to Zen about that on Friday. And then, if anyone has any questions of that, or the translations of the Bible, or where he gets his information, it'll just blow you away, because there's no excuse for not understanding after that. To me, that he is the father based upon the way that Zen explains it. He wrote the book Sons of God and Lucifer, the father of Cain. He has 7 books out there if you want to check those out in his Fallen Angels TV website. But moving along with the nun, this is a map, and this is nun and Nonet. This is Sobek, which is Saturn, and this is a Peep, which is a Thoth. And then here you get Ra, Ptah. So this is, there was Re and Ra, and then Autumn Ra, and so it gets confusing over time, which bloodline belongs to who, and the battle between Horus and Set, and who became on the throne at that point, and who's coming at the end times as the Antichrist. So Sobek, Saturn, was before the flood. It represented Saturn, and then Jupiter represents after the flood. So when you think about Brahma with the 4 faces, and then you see Kunum with the 4 faces in Egypt, then he's the resurrected Saturn. Here, I'll show you real quick. So this is Jupiter, the ram, and I'll go back to that. But I just wanted to show that that means the 4 faces of Jupiter. So, and it's the 4 souls of Horus that ties to the stars. So it's kind of like a, the before the flood, and Cain was killed, and then Tubal-Cain with the arrow of Lamech, which Tubal-Cain guided. And so Neth, see up here is Neth, which represents the nun and her DNA. And so she's the female aspect through time that represents the female aspect of Tubal-Cain over time. So if she's Venus, then she represents the phallus of Anu, which is Uranus. And so there was some things going on with, Saturn castrating Anu, and then Jupiter castrating Saturn and becoming the king of the gods. So here's the boat. It's called the Man-Dijet, and Dijet means snake. Nun represents this guy here. He represents different figures, like frog-headed or blue-skinned, or with a beard. So this is Ogdoad with the people. The scarab means the afterlife, and a lot of Egyptians were buried with a lapis lazuli scarabs, meaning that was going to be protection to them into the afterlife. So this is the solar boat of Ra, and you see the flowers at the end. It represents DNA. And I've showed this diagram before in some shows. I had one with Anthony Patch, and we showed Isis and Osiris and Set and Nephthys. And this is after the flood, and this represents the Ogdoad. And this represents this system here, with the moon and Jupiter and Venus. And so this becomes the golden ratio after the flood. And this is the 666, like CERN symbol here. And this is the spiral that is underneath the pyramid. And so Ptah, after the flood, he's Tubal-Cain, represents this DNA from Cain's bloodline. And the angel Samael is related with this mystery of the Zayin letter. In the Zohar, it is the same as the letter Z and the letter H. And this represents DNA, this represents the womb, and this represents time. And so when you put these two together, it represents male and female, because Ptah and Tubal-Cain was actually represented as a male and female. And that's why angels and deities, that's why deities, the word deity means two, it means deuce. And so Imhotep represents Ptah as well. And so this is like the golden ratio, and this is Ptah's name. So after the flood, with this Jupiter, which is a culmination of a representation of the resurrected Saturn and a new DNA connected. This is representative of that, and Cain's bloodline. So this is the formula for creation in the occult myth. And again, you know, this is after the flood, and this is atomic weight of the hydrogen atom, combined diameters of the Earth and Moon. And this is the figures here. So I got some really interesting stuff coming up, so just bear with me here. This is the scimitar way, and it represents these two bloodlines. See the knot they tie here? And that knot's very important because it represents DNA and represents this golden ratio in the bloodline of Cain. And this is the toroidal field that Anthony talks about that goes up to the moon, which the moon is the elixir of life. Here's another picture of scimitar way, so you can see this is Happy. This is one of the four souls of Horus. And he's the god of the Nile. And so this represents tying this knot that I'm going to talk about a little bit further. And so the Ankh represents the knot. This is the Isis knot called I think it's called the Tayet or the T. And it represents the Ankh because the Ogdoad are 4 frogs and 4 snakes, representative Amon, Amonet, Nun, Nonet, Cook, Coquette, He, and Hahet. And I've translated some of these names, but it's too much to go into all of them right now. So on our next show, we'll do that next Tuesday. But it's real interesting how it ties with the Hebrew alphabet too. And I'm not going to delve too much into that, just a teensy bit. So this is He. He's part of the Ogdoad. And we know Amon is Jupiter, and Amonet is Mute and Isis. And so they had Khonsu, which is the moon god, which represents the moon. So the 4 first rulers of the world after the flood of Egypt was Ra, Shu, Jeb, and Osiris. The Bene Gesserit was pictured as a ram or a ram-headed man. In some instance, he was shown with 4 heads, 2 facing forward and 2 back, to symbolize the souls of the 4 gods he represents. So He represents autumn, Ra, and he also represents this, you know, the ram and Jupiter, and Thoth is really a representative of that side of it, or Enlil, because Enki is the other side of that with Saturn. But the children of He is Tefnut, Shu, and Kunum. So if you see the ram, that represents Jupiter. And he's wearing this hat like Osiris. The Apis, originally Ptah, later Osiris, and then Autumn. In Egypt, the bull was worshipped as Apis, the embodiment of Ptah, and later of Osiris. So the bull's name is actually Happy, and represents this this here with the tying of the knot and the DNA. Autumn was the god of creation also, and so I guess he represents the Apis, or the Abzu, or the nun. Heliopolis, Autumn was considered to be the first god, having created himself, sitting on a mound of a bin. And we know that Thoth is the bin bird, and he represents the bin stone. And I'm going to talk more about that too in a minute. So He, DNA symbols of a mirror of infinity of the moon energy. That's what He means. He is infinity. Hu is a deification of the first word in the Egyptian mythology of the Aeneid. Hu and He, God, the deification of eternity in the Egyptian mythology of the Ogdoad. Hu is also a Kachina in Hopi mythology, And we know the blue Kachina is Sirius, and the red Kachina is now a white dwarf, and that's Sirius B, which represents Osiris. So they're twin stars. They rotate around each other. So the Ennead is, this represents the 9, because the 8 became 9 with the sun. And this is Khufu here, and he's in Lower Egypt, and this is Kasekemwe. He's Ham's son, and you can translate Kasekemwe to Ham, and the Hebrew language, that's what his name is. And so this represents the dualism of both DNAs merged together. So Hu or He may refer to He or Hu, god, androgynous Egyptian god or goddess. He, interjection, indicating weak or weary amusement. He, letter N, the 5th letter of many Semitic alphabets, including Hebrew, Arabic, Phoenician, and Aramaic. He is often used to represent the name of God, as he stands for Hashem. Some pious Jews will replace God's name Adonai by Hashem. And Adonai is translated to Tammuz, in my opinion. Adonai is Hebrew for my lords, from Adon, Lord, owner. The singular form is Adonai, my Lord, a royal non-deity title in 1 Samuel 29:8, and is to be carefully distinguished from the divine title Adonai, used of Yahweh only. So there's confusion with the split of the name of that name. This was used by the Phoenicians for the god Tammuz, and the origin of the Greek name Adonis, the lover of Semiramis, Isis, the mother and wife. Jews only use a singular to refer to distinguished person. Jews use Adonai instead in prayers, and would use Hashem, the name. So these are the artifacts from Egypt representing the 4 frogs and the 4 snakes. You can see them. There's lots of artifacts of that. And here's the map again of the nun giving birth to these gods during the Ogdoad period of around 2600 BC. And the main gods of this below would be Amon, and see the wire behind his head, and he has the bull's tail. And this is Isis as mute. And so they had the god Khonsu as their son. So the boat of a million years is the Mandijet, is the solar barge of Ra. It is used to travel the underworld so that Ra may rise as the sun the next day. On board were Ra, Horus, Mat, Khepri, Heka, Set, Bastet, and other members of the Ennead of Heliopolis. The main role of Set was to row the barge, and Bastet protected her father, Apep, the serpent. Ben was the mound that arose from the primordial waters Nu, upon which the creator god Autumn settled in the creation story of Heliopolitan from the ancient Egyptian religion. The Ben stone, also known as the pyramidation, is the top stone of the Egyptian pyramid. It is also related to the obelisk. Things ought to start getting real interesting now. In the pyramid text, utterances 587 and 600, Autumn himself is at times referred to as Mound. It was said to have turned into a small pyramid located in Anu, within which Autumn was said to dwell. Other cities developed their own myths of primeval mound. The Ben stone, named after the mound, was sacred stone in the temple of Ra at Heliopolis. It was the location of which the first rays of the sun fell. It is thought to have been the prototype for later obelisks, and the capstones of the Great Pyramids were based on its design. So I guess what it's saying here is the Ben stone represents the phallus, which is the obelisk. You're still there, Tim, right?
Yeah, I'm just
Okay.
listening because we have that screen-o-matics counting down on us, so I didn't want to. Yeah, like what is that? 15 minutes or something on the screen-o-matic. That's what it looks
We
like.
can still keep going though after that.
Okay.
Okay. So Bennu, Autumn, Thoth, Hermes, Orion aspect, because there's many aspects over time of Orion. Eagle, Phoenix, Well. Well means dragon, and Abzu, and it also means Nahash. I didn't put that one on here, but that's one of the most important ones. So Thoth, Bennu, Phoenix represents this Ben stone. And this is how I see it. I can't play this, but this is energy going around like the tuning forks that Egyptians use around the earth, and it goes through the center. So I'm thinking, could the missing capstone represent the cosmic donut hole in the toroidal field?
Yeah, I when I look at that, I think of the apple in half also, and the owl eyes. I see the two smaller circles there being where the seeds would be in the middle with the apple. It's just, it really just seems to be a pattern that's repeated in nature. And
yeah, the 5, is it 5 points in an apple?
Right.
And so the 5 points represent Venus.
Right. And this eider thing in tokamak is reproducing that center donut with the electromagnetic field. So it's very central to everything, this shape.
Yeah, it is. It looks like the quantum entanglement that we were talking about. So new uppercase N, this is so interesting here. So bear with me on some of these explanations that I wanted to pull up and collaborate a little bit with Anthony on. But new uppercase N, lowercase v, also transcribed as NY. And we know that New York is a city of the occult. There were a lot of their, I guess that's kind of their capital.
It's the Big Apple.
Yeah, we were just talking about Apple. And it's where the one world trade is that I'm going to talk about that represents the DNA too. And we talked about Orion representing that as the gate as well. And so NI is it represents this 13th letter from the Greek alphabet. So this whole word new or abyss represents 13. So we know that that represents the 13th pillar, which the moon rests on the 13th pillar above the earth. And the 13th rings of Uranus are moons that were after a cataclysmic event. So there's 13 rings there. And there's more interesting connections with this N and 13 and a lot of other things. But this, in the system of Greek numerals, it has a value of 50. It is derived from the Phoenician letter nun, Phoenician nun.svg. It's Latin for its equivalent is an N. We talked about N a lot in our shows, and its ties to the mark of the beast and Osiris, though the lowercase resembles the Roman lowercase v. So they're basically the same thing too, the N and the V. And we know the V represents the fifth age. So the 13th pillar represents the tall cross, and the reason it does is because it's talking about crossing DNA from the 13th pillar. The 13th pillar is the one that we see broken in half from the Freemasons boards. You see the pillar broken, and you see Saturn standing there, and then Venus standing there. And so it basically represents this two knockdown or two DNAs that they're wanting to bring together into one to raise the Antichrist. And that's what that represents. And 9/11, it represents the IXXI fusing the Y, and Orion represents 9/11 too, represents the 9/11 gate. Nu equals V equals N. It's the symbol for the frequency of a wave in physics and other fields, sometimes also spatial frequency. The specific volume in thermodynamics. So I'm talking about the abyss here. The abyss represents the frequency of a wave in physics and other fields, sometimes also spatial frequency. Thank you. The specific volume in thermodynamics. So the abyss represents all of this.
Kinematic, viscosity, and fluid mechanics.
You can keep going. Here you go.
I don't know what Poisson's ratio is, but the ratio of strains perpendicular with and parallel with and applied force. Any of 3 kinds of neutrino and particle physics.
Here you go. Keep going.
Okay. One of the Greeks in mathematical finance known as Vega, the number of neutrons released per fission of an atom in nuclear physics, a DNA polymerase found in higher eukaryotes and implicated in translation synthesis, molecular vibrational mode, Vx, where X is the number of the vibration, a label.
You go for it.
you love it. You like the, it's like word power here.
Hey, I'm talking most of the time, so you go right ahead. I like hearing your voice.
The stoichiometric coefficient, the greatest fixed point of a function as commonly used in the something calculus of free names of a process as used in the pi calculus, the maximum conditioning possible for an unconditioned stimulus in the Rescorla-Wagner model, the true anomaly. It is an angular parameter that defines the position of a body moving along in orbit. See orbital elements.
We only got 2 more.
Okay. And the principal quantum number, the first of a set of quantum numbers of the atomic orbital, n an electron density, the measure of the probability of an electron being present at a specific location, and an amount of substance in chemical physics. And we should get PhDs after this program. ATC code, N nervous system, a section of the anatomical therapeutic chemical classification system, haplogroup N, mtDNA, a human mitochondrial DNA haplogroup N, Y DNA, a human Y chromosome DNA haplogroup, N-band, an atmospheric transmission window in the mid-infrared centered on 10 micrometers, N-ray, a hypothesized form of radiation found to be illusory.
I can kind of connect to a lot of what a lot of this means, and I need to sit down and pretty much go through this because I put links below, and there's a lot of people that watch our show that understand these things and that I could talk to, but I just kind of came across this stuff yesterday, and in the links below, you can click on other links to kind of see even further what this means. I mean, it's like a whole new world in so many different directions with this. The Egyptian hieroglyph for J is in, is the snake. It means the same thing. So the abyss represents the snake. The Phoenician letter, it looks like kind of like the lightning bolt, doesn't it? Like the Nazi lightning bolt. I better not say this.
Yeah, don't mess that one up. I'll say it. Etruscan. Etruscan is the word for the day on Sesame Street here. Etruscan. That's the N.
It's a horse. I'm just being funny. Someone got on to me for that.
Oh, yes, Etruscan.
Okay, and so this is the symbol. And then Greek is Nu, which is NV.
Which is Nevada, yes.
Mm-hmm. It's the snake of the 5th age. Okay, Egyptian word for snake was Djet, and we know that Djet was a pillar, right? Guess what pillar it is? The 13th pillar.
Really?
Yeah, you know why?
No, I don't know why the Djet's the 13th pillar. That's interesting.
Because Cain was killed, and it represents his spine.
Cain was killed. Okay.
So Osiris was Cain, and we see them lifting up the Djet pillar to raise it in the sky to lift up the man, which is Orion because he's Osiris. So the D-jet is represents pretty much the pillar of his bloodline.
So we got a straight line in the 3 of the 13, and if you overlap them, it kind of almost is like the Kundalini going up the spine, or the interweaving of DNA, which is the 13th pillar, is the interwoven of the DNA. So,
yeah,
I can see how it's kind of symbolically like that.
yeah. Semitic people working in Egypt adapted hieroglyphics to create the first alphabet, and that they used the same snake symbol to represent N. Now, some people might not agree with that, but this is just the research that I came upon that ties into all this. The name for the letter in the Phoenician, Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic alphabets is Nun, which means fish in some of these languages. And I know that catfish is called one of the pharaohs of Egypt. His name means catfish. So
that must have been southern Egypt. I'm sorry.
That was the south.
South, yes, the south. South would have a catfish king. Yep.
Well, we know Cain is the scorpion king. So
right, we know
check out my blog.
Scorpion. Yeah.
Yeah, Cain the scorpion king.
We got less than 6 minutes on the remainder of your slides for just so you can.
Oh, well, we'll still be here. We'll just stop that, and then we'll just keep going.
Okay.
So N for
Nula.
A rare Roman numeral for 0. So the abyss means 0.
So it's like saying the null hypothesis in scientific methods and stuff like that.
Yeah. So if you think about CERN and 0, and then the fastest speed it could go from 0 point, and you know that CERN has the cold. It's way colder than space inside, and way hotter than the sun.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it? When you think about it, it's got the fusion in the middle, and yeah, it's crazy.
So this represents Nule, and this is 4 dots, and we know that they worship the 8, which represents 4 above and 4 below. So there's 4 on this side and 4 on this side. And it also represents the S. S represents DNA also, and it's, in a way, I can't explain it right now, but N is the 14th letter in modern English alphabet, and interestingly enough, the ISO based in the Latin alphabet. So we're talking about the ISO basic Latin alphabet is Latin script alphabet, and consists of 2 sets of 26 letters codified in the various national and international standards and used widely in international communication. The 2 sets contain the following 26 letters each. And I don't know if you've seen the occult pictures where they have one hand with one set of letters and the other with the other. And Shiva, her hands represent musical notes. And when she does her hands, in her dance, or his dance, because he's both a male and female, but when he does his dance, and all those hands, they represent numbers and letters and frequency.
Amazing.
And so we know that also Shiva represented Orion and Cernunnos, Proto-Shiva, back in the day, and then later on it was Enlil, and also we have the Ogdoad here representing that change in time, and the star Juno, which is very important to all of this, is the key to everything, and which represents the Polaris star. So ISO, interestingly enough, not only does it represent the Latin alphabet here, it represents the International Standardization Organization of Geneva, Switzerland. And if you want to check that out, it's tied to the United Nations. N also represents the NATO phonetic November, and this is the Morse code of N. And it represents this in Braille, and it represents this signal flag. And N has 4 points. So mem is also N, and in Latin it's M, and M equals 13. Here we go with that number 13 again, 13th pillar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because Venus is the twin of Saturn, and it's tied to that resurrection that's connected to Mercury and all of that with Thoth.
You can kind of see how when you look at M, you got the 2 pillars on either side, and you got the thing in the middle, the V, like Vulcan or.
Oh, yeah.
So you can kind of see that what they're doing there.
Uh-huh. I didn't think about it that way. So we know the mem is king over water in the book of creation, Egyptian men hieroglyph symbol for watcher. And we know that E, which represents Neptune, the ones the bull were sacrificed to.
Yeah.
He became inky, and he represents Aquarius, the age of Aquarius.
Okay. So we got 1 more minute on the screen-o-matic.
Okay. Well, don't worry. Nothing's going to happen. We'll just hit pause and keep going on Google. So we've talked about before how mem is translated to muon. So this actually means 13. See?
MM. Okay. Yeah.
So we look at this and we're thinking about, okay, well, the M equals 13 and the electron represents the negative particle, which is the abyss, right?
Mm-hmm.
So electron is one of the 3 major parts of all matter, and we talked about this before, but this will give us a better understanding of it after this. 6 types, which is electron, neutrino, muon, neutrino, tau, and tau neutrino. We know tau is the tau cross that they want to cross over the DNA. And Ibaru actually means the crossing of DNA too. So if I showed this picture before with the phallus supposedly supposed to go down in the middle, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Ben stone representing the Ogdoad and this DNA of the 13 pillar, well, it also represents the abyss of the negative electron.
Well, I guess it could also be the uterus too, when you think about the ovaries on the sides, and if you're going to do the phallus, the uterus, and the ovaries. I mean, it all kind of is similar in some ways.
Well, Hermes and Aphrodite are pretty much one deity as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, the golden phallus is the thing that was fastened to resurrect Horus, which was Isis' son. And
it's also interesting that shape there is also kidney shaped, which is in the Chinese medicine. They believe kidney energy is your life force, basically.
Here's N again, north and DNA. Abyss and DNA. That's the way I see it, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So abusos, again, is this is in the Strong's translation. It's a negative particle. It means the deep, bottomless pit. And here it is in CERN as an electron. And I don't think they really understand what the whole electron is. But, I mean, we're talking about this, the abyss. You know, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about this, the Ogdoad. This is their building of their DNA from the dead after the flood.
Right. It's from the underworld. Yeah.
Yeah, through the bloodline of Ptah, which is Tubal-Cain's bloodline, which is Lucifer's son is Cain. So I just wanted to kind of, you know, point that out again, as that's what we're kind of put together here. So here is the seal of Thoth, which is Gizda, and this is later representation of DNA of Enlil and Tammuz. That's what anyone can look this up and see the seal, and they can see that Tammuz is also on the seal. And this represents the tree of knowledge and good and evil in the garden, because there were true trees. One tree was immortality, and that was the tree that Adam and Eve was not able to eat from anymore. because they took on this DNA.
I think that the center symbol, what's striking me is I'm also thinking of the 13th pillar in the middle. And that makes me think of the fascia, where you have the axe on the outside and they have the bound 13 in the middle. That's usually how they show the symbol of the fascia in the Congress. Behind the speaker's podium on either side, you see the fascia, which stands for fascist. I mean, the bound 13 bundles with the axes on them almost looks like this, and because they put one on each side. So it's like having 13 on one side with the axe pointing out to the left and 13 on the other pointing out to the right. It's almost a representation of what this is. Another way of looking at it.
Yeah, so the 13 pillar is the Dingir, and Dingir means snake too. And so to me, it represents the spine. This is where they get their DNA from Eve, from Adam, and not from Adam, but from Samuel and Cain, which he had fallen angel DNA. So this is what they want to do. They want the fallen angel DNA of these two elements, which is the Ka, he's the bull of heaven, which is Enlil, and Tammuz, which was Dumuzi, which was the son of Enki. And he's the brother or half brother of Enlil, which represents Apollo. And so they represent many things over time, depending on the battles of heaven, the planets and the resurrection of these gods and things like that. But this is just, the way that I see it. And so he needed this to take control. So this is representative Hermes. They represent the Gemini twins too, because Apollo, which represents the sun, represents Castor, and he represents Pollux, which is Hercules. And Hercules also represents the hybrid, like Nimrod, because Cain was half immortal. So he was going to not be able to stay. He had to be resurrected through this certain way. And that's what this represents here. This represents the Gemini twins, the hybrid Hercules, which is Nimrod, and then you have this represents the whole Kabbalah tree with Hermes and Aphrodite, which is Venus, and the Gemini twins here that his one of the souls of Horus is sitting on here.
I think that right there, what you got your pointer on, is the base for the Statue of Liberty. That design. Yeah. I think that design is the base for the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, it's the 8-pointed star of Anu. It represents the phallus. I know, it does. That's just the way I see it. But Hermes Criophorus. Yeah,
Criophorus or something like that.
So you see him holding the ram? Okay, well, that's because this is Jupiter, and this is representing the resurrection of Saturn through the ram, through Jupiter, and this is him taking control. And here you see his Hermes wings here, and his staff with the snakes, and then you see him holding the ram. So here is again the German eagle here, which is the tribe of Dan, and this is the Vatican, and in these letters here represents Thoth. This is his name.
Yeah, I had a Facebook post that I just did a couple days ago on the Bolivian Day of the Dead, and how the Catholic Church had to basically endorse it, or with the native people, where they had decorated skulls and all kinds of stuff, because the local, I guess, parish that didn't support it had a bunch of stones thrown through their windows. So the Catholics back down and support it now, so that they don't have damaged property from the natives that decorate the dead. But you can see this worship of the dead thing is a real ancient. I mean, it goes way back. to many cultures that believe in the ancestor worship, and that's where this stuff comes from.
Yeah, I mean, the ancient Egypt were the gods of the dead, and Enki Saturn represents the bloodline of Cain, and then his brother, half brother, which is Thoth, which is Hermes. He represents Mercury, and Akhenaten worshipped Mercury, and Akhenaten called himself Mars, the god of war, and he worshipped Mercury, which was Aten, which was worshipped Thoth and Mercury as one god, And so that's where this comes from Thoth, from the DNA changes, and some of the royal families that didn't carry this bloodline here, they had like a cover up, like they still wanted to be in control, and that's why they fight with each other. They have the wars between the sun god and the moon god all the time, because of this history, and because they want to be able to come back from the dead. And that's where the silver cord comes in. I think you and I talked about the other day, how people kill things, when you were talking about how they go around the Mecca Saturn cube and all that energy, because
the way they get a vortex going downwards into the what do they call it? The tesseract, the 3-dimensional cube, where it absorbs the energy of despair and sadness, all the heavy, depressing energies down into this black cube. Probably flows along ley lines. They have some way of absorbing this negative energy for their abyss. Maybe it sucks the energy into their abyss. Who knows?
Yeah. And so, we know Nimrod was killed by Esau, and so he was like a hybrid. And then there was Semiramis said that her son Tammuz was the resurrected Nimrod that was born from a light of a ray of a sun. And so that represents this tree here. So what they want to do here, I believe, is this, this resurrection. And here in Genesis 11:1, it said, and the whole earth was of one language and one speech. And then we have all of these glass plates at CERN that have light beams going through them. CERN is like, it has harmonics, it has all these one language, and then it has lead ions right now, and it's going to be very powerful this month, more than what they said it was. And if you go to anthonypatch.com, you'll see his updates on the power of CERN this month and what they're doing and the dates. But I wanted to point out that, they have this because they know that when the phoenix rises, and we just talked about how Thoth was the phoenix and he puts the ashes on Saturn. Mm-hmm. Well, that's why they worship him, because they want him, the phoenix, to rise. They want this portal to king of the world again. And so doing so, they want to have all these languages at CERN, because in the ancient text it says that Enlil was the god of Nippur, and for him to come down, he's the moon god, and for him to come down, they had to speak in one language. They had all languages had to worship him in every language for him to come down, and that's what it says in the ancient text, from what I understand. And so that's tied to the CERN, which is kind of like, wanting to build the Tower of Babel. And from what I understand from my research is they wanted to build the tower up to the moon. And the moon is the elixir of life. And it was probably a lot closer to Earth back then. I'm not really sure, how close. But, the Tower of Babel wasn't a little place. It was huge. It was a giant tower that was never completed.
It's strange how they lay out these the screens with the languages. I wonder if they do it in order of age of the oldest to the newest, and then they just shoot rays through the whole thing, trying to recombine it, in a kind of a systematic, linear way.
Yeah, I don't know. But and Anthony mentioned the clothing of Adam being there at CERN.
Yeah.
On a glass plate. I mean, we don't have a whole lot of information, and of course, he can't reveal a lot of his information, but it's just interesting how we know, and I know from resources, I truly believe that they're being honest, and that it is true that these people that work at CERN say there were demons. There's demons in CERN, and
I think without a doubt,
yeah.
and some of these people that run it and fund it are completely demon possessed. I would say that they compartmentalize everything so that the ones who aren't just work on specific parts of the project, which is the Nazi way. It's a need to know basis. They compartmentalize. That's the old Nazi formula. And the guys at the top who are fully demon possessed or who fund it know exactly what all of it means.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely the biggest occultic machine in the world. And,
Well, I don't know. That eider thing's supposed to be more expensive than that, is what they're saying.
Yeah, maybe it's just a part of connecting to it.
Because big mechanism. Maybe we got a few of these, that are like big monsters. Maybe it's just part of a cog in the machine. CERN is a big cog, and this eider thing's a big cog, and it's like, we talked with Anthony about the synchrotrons all over the world, and we got what? China's going to build that big mega one, supposedly, CERN.
Yeah.
So are they just recreating the components of a machine on top of the surface of the Earth? I don't know.
I don't know. Is that machine is a plasma machine, right?
Yeah, they have to put plasma into it to generate the fusion, which is it's amazing. All this stuff. I just call this fallen angel technology, because basically when I'm looking at CERN and these other fusion reactors, we're kind of looking at the ancient pyramids, but in modern technological, created with the help of humans and the technology, building the monstrosities to do this spiritual fallen angel work, basically. So I'm more and more curious what the great work actually means, because with eider sounding like rite, it sounds like and rite, if you look up the definition, is a ceremony, a ritual. I'm just looking at high science and witchcraft seem to go together from this fallen angel technology.
Yeah.
Or magic, however you want to look at it.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to watch our show Friday with Zen, I'm sure that he will make more clear of the fallen angels and, the bloodline and all of that. It's hard for people today to really open up their mind to the Bible and how it was then with the fallen angels and, with the flood and with the bloodlines. And it's very complex. It's a very complex to understand. I'm still trying to understand everything that I'm sharing, along the way. This is years of, few years of studies that I've done to, try to understand the ancient history and the Bible, who in the Bible, and, who was who in the Bible. And I've uncovered, who Queen of Sheba is, who David, Jesse, and many people in the Bible are in ancient history, which is fascinating. They don't really care about history or the Bible. I have people in my family, that say, "Oh, well, that's old stuff, and that's that's ancient history. That's a long time ago." It really doesn't matter now. But it does matter now, because this has everything to do with revelation. It does. And when you expand your mind and you try to, open all of yourself up to Jesus Christ and have him give you the knowledge to understand and not fear, because fear doesn't come from God. He says in the word that he doesn't give us a spirit of fear, but of sound mind. And I think that a lot of people are just taught from the world, but when you can separate yourself from the world teaching and go specifically to Jesus Christ for all his teaching, all his knowledge, and to let him guide you in your heart and your mind every single day, then I think that that's the way that we should live. And
Right.
I am sure that his disciples understood all of these things.
Oh,
They did.
Well, that's why revelation knowledge is from the Holy Spirit, and he will reveal the things that you ask for, that you need to know, that he wants you to know. And this is the picture we're looking at. In a way, we're looking at Revelation chapter 9. When you look at this picture, how many times can you say that about parts of the Bible? That you're looking at something related to the key of the abyss. It's built over Apollyon, the site of the abyss. The Apollon's the angel that opens the abyss, or Abaddon. And, you're looking at something here that is right in Revelation, and to our best guess. So to not be interested in it and just want to watch football, I don't know what to say to you.
We can't take football to heaven, I don't think. And
some people, it is their heaven, and they can have their heaven on earth, which is football, which isn't much of a heaven. But when you're dealing with real end time stuff, and you know what times you're living in, all that stuff turns into fluff. And I haven't seen people are still falling for the bread and circus of the Roman Empire, which distracts people with giving them entertainment and distractions. And that's what our government and all these governments are doing right now.
Yeah, well, we're not supposed to conform to the patterns of the world. And I know we live in the world. And I know that that God understands that. He knows we're in a fallen world, and he knows that we're all sinners. He's God. He made everything, and Satan fell, and he wants to take over as the creator of God. He wants to be God, and so that's why
the Bible is real, and it's showing you right here. It's not some kind of story. It's not a fairy tale. Right there, the Bible's real. When Esau took the porridge, he sold his birthright. When the people take the mark of the beast, like we did with the last show with the cell phone, to get their cell phone, they're selling their birthright. This is reality.
Yeah. It's, a lot of people are going to wonder after the Antichrist, and he's going to be very powerful and offer everybody something. I'm sure there has to be some big events that happen into the world before he's here. But I do know that there are bloodlines that follow him that are, and then there is, a battle between bloodlines to rule the world right now. And whoever it is, they're going to hand it over to the Antichrist. And we know that Obama is the head of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which this thing is supposed to be signed now. And we're going to be seeing a whole new trade agreement. And these same things happened during the time of Solomon. The same things happened during the time of Egypt, during the Ogdoad, and all of those things. The rivers represent the gods and the trades and who owns the land and who has the power. And so we live in this fallen world that is controlled by that. And once Adam and Eve was in heaven, and then they fell, and we're in this earth now. But Jesus said this isn't our home, and we may be here temporarily, and we don't understand everything, but it's his will, and we have to trust God and just understand that he's made a place for us in heaven. And we know that day is going to come one day. Isn't time interesting? Because where God is, there is no time. In the dimensions where the fallen angels dwell, and the underworld above and below in the universe, there's time. and the fourth dimension is time, and so that's just interesting, that God is way above this universe. He doesn't dwell, where time is, and he is in full control of everything. And the Bible says after the abyss is open, the demons cannot harm those that are sealed by God. And
which is a more interesting, how are you sealed? What does it have to, that's another fascinating topic. That's a pressing issue right now with understanding that. And we're also going to be trying to get, I think Anthony's going to visit us before the 20th. As we're watching CERN and the lead shots that they're going to do, supposedly. I mean, I always say that about CERN. I don't trust NASA. I don't trust CERN about anything they say. You just got to watch and observe.
Yeah. So well, hopefully me and Anthony and you, I need to collaborate with him and yes, interview him about Saturn and CERN and the Birkeland currents and some amongst other things. And it's going to be something else, but if we could get that show put together, it'll be before the 20th.
So we have Zen for Friday. We're going to tie some of these loose ends here on the genealogies, and then we'll move into the CERN watch as we move towards the 20th.
Right. And we have some more interesting things coming up later if we're still here. So we'll announce those things next time when we get confirmations.
We'll have a whole show on Etruscans. And no, we won't. That's a good way to end it. Okay, well, thank you very much, Chris, for all you've done for us. It's always great. We bring the Bible to life with what's going on in the world right now. It's a living part of it's living spirit of God, and we can see it manifesting right in front of us everywhere. So I'm enjoying being able to be a watchman in these times and point things out to folks, and we just keep on doing it.
That's right. As long as we can, and until the internet changes, which it will one day. We just don't know when, but we just have to wait until that time and do whatever God allows us to do.
Amen.
All right. Well, God bless everybody. We'll see you Friday, either 12 or 1 o'clock.
All right. Bye-bye. See you then.